Hey everyone, it's Phil Wade. How are you tonight? Sorry I'm a minute or two late here. We're just ready to get going. If you could type into the box and say hello, let me know who's here. I appreciate everybody being here. Let me know if you can hear me, see me, and we'll get going in just a moment. Hey Maureen, how you doing? Thank you for being here. Get started in just a second. Thank you so much. Hey Naomi, good to see you. Thank you. All right, let's move the slide and we'll get going. Kind of go through the agenda first. First we're going to talk about the office policies and procedures. These are general real estate concepts we're going to go through, and they are things that you have a fairly high likelihood of running into. Hey, Shanitha, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. We're just getting started. We're going to be talking about kind of some real estate concepts. So you guys all were tested on them, you studied on them, but here's the thing. So, when you take your real estate course and real estate exam, a lot of the information, most of the information you never use. What we have here in the office policies and procedures are things that actually come up. So we want to make sure that you are knowledgeable, you understand these concepts. Remember, you only needed a 75 to pass. So there may be some things you don't completely understand, and we want to make sure that you don't have any issues when you're out there working. Then we're going to talk a little bit about Boomtown, a little bit about .loop, and a little bit about social media, so that you're ready to get going. All right, so let me just turn that phone off. 1 second. Hold on, please. Alrighty, I'm back. Sorry about that. So the first one is agency. And again, if you have any questions at all, just type them in and we'll get them answered. So agency. So in Florida, there are 3 types of agencies. Agency is how we're representing either the buyer or seller. So one is single agent. The second is transaction broker, and the third is non-brokerage relationship. So in Florida, the default is transaction broker. So at Dalton Wade, we always function as a transaction broker. All right, so let me explain what the benefits of being a transaction broker are. It allows 2 agents from the same firm to do that transaction. So let me say that again. It allows 2 agents from the same firm. So one agent is the listing agent, the other agent is the buyer's agent. When you're a transaction broker, the brokerage can represent both sides. One agent, Maureen, is a Dalton Wade agent. She can have both the listing and the buyer, provided she's a transaction broker. When you're a single agent, you can't do that, right? When you're a single agent, you can't even show folks from your brokerage the property, right? Because that's a conflict of interest, right? So that's that whole thing of transitioning to transaction broker. It's very clumsy. Every time there's a showing with someone from your brokerage, that form has to be signed. So that's why most times, the vast majority of cases, we function as a transaction broker. So when the brokerage has both sides, or you as one agent have both sides, you have to be neutral. You are not favoring one party, meaning the seller, over the buyer. You are neutral to both. You are facilitating that transaction. Same if both agents are from the same brokerage. Looks like Inga is typing a question here, so we'll see what she has. Let her finish typing. I'll keep talking. And then if you have both sides, Maureen works at Dalton Wade. So if Maureen has both sides, both the buyer and the seller, she has to be neutral. If two agents from Dalton Wade, one has the seller, the other has a buyer, neutral, right? We are not favoring one over the other. Now, however, in most cases, the vast majority of transactions, there are two brokerages. So if that's the case, then this is what you're doing. So if you're the listing agent, you are trying to get your client the most money possible. If you're the buyer's agent, you're trying to buy that home for the least amount of money as possible. Let me talk about non-agent. Non-agent is not very commonly used. Say, for instance, you're selling your home and you find a buyer yourself. You are not going to be representing that buyer. You're going to make them sign what's called a non-brokerage relationship. You are not representing them. So whenever you're not representing someone, that's what gets signed. You're in a non-brokerage relationship with them. Let me just go back to transaction broker real quick. So here's one area where I see agents have a difficult time with Inga's having difficulty hearing. Anybody else having any issues with the audio? Sometimes refreshing the browser fixes that. All right, let's give that a second. So again, one of the areas where I see, I guess, non-compliance potential problems is when, so even though you're a transaction broker, one of the things is limited confidentiality. I spelled this wrong, but I'm typing it in. Limited confidentiality. What has to be kept confidential? What has to be kept confidential is what a seller will take and what a buyer will pay. So say, for instance, you're representing a buyer, right? And you put in your offer and the listing agent comes back to you and says, hey, let's wrap this up. What's it going to take? What's your buyer's number? And you know kind of what they've told you, what they'll go up to, and you tell them. That would be a violation of that limited confidentiality provision. I see agents do that. You know, be careful of that. Smart agents will try to trick you into telling them what your seller or buyer either will pay or take. That's a violation. Think of, you know, let's use that example where you knew from the buyer, hi Ernesto, we're just getting going. Thank you for being here. We're talking now about agency. You know, the default is transaction broker. Let's the brokerage have both sides of the transaction, either one agent or both. And we've kind of moved on to sort of one of the things is even when you're a transaction broker, there's what's called limited confidentiality. What has to be kept confidential is what a seller will take or what a buyer will pay. So sometimes the other agent, the other side, will try to, I don't want to say trick you, but maybe, you know, get you to kind of tell them what your client's number is, and they use that against you, and that's a problem. So that would be a violation. Again, think of, you know, your buyer told you what they're willing to pay, and then they found out you told the other side. They're going to be very, very disappointed and potentially filing a complaint against you. So be careful of that. Any questions on agency before we move on to fair housing? All right, sounds like everybody's good there. Thank you. Inga, were you able to refresh your browser? Did that work? All right, we'll move on to fair housing. Hopefully Inga's able to hear me. So let's chat a little bit about fair housing. So fair housing is much more of an issue with rentals than it is with kind of the purchase and sale of a home. With rentals, there's a lot more people looking to rent a particular apartment than there are people looking to buy a house. You know, you may have a lot of showings, but you might get one or two offers. And usually that, seller is probably not going to, discriminate against any protected classes. But with rentals, there's a much higher probability that, you're going to have some problems potentially. So what you want to do, so if you're doing a rental, you want to chat with the owner up front before you actually put it out there. And you're going to ask them, what are their criteria? Meaning, what are they looking for in terms of the person's credit score, their income level, and their background, right? So those three things: income, credit, and background. So if that's all, I don't want to say documented, but if that's all known up front, and the policy is the first person that passes those three things is the person you rent to. If that's how it's set up, there can never be a fair housing violation. It's all documented, right? It's all documented that this is what it's going to take. This is who we're going to rent to. And we don't care who they are, what they are, where they are, as long as they pass those three things. And then whoever passes first is the renter. It's when subjectivity comes into play. That's where problems come into play. Oh, I'm not renting to them because of this. No, that's you need to run away from that person, right? That's you're not working with anybody like that. Fair housing is sad in a way that it even exists in 2019, but it still does. There are still, people out there that, whatever. But again, to prevent that, as an agent, if you talk with your owner and you come up with those three criteria: credit, income, and background, and if they pass or exceed the criteria, that's who you rent to. Simple. Fair housing will never rear its ugly head if you do that. It's when it gets subjective. Well, oh, why did you pick that person over this person? That's where you can have an issue, and people can feel that they were not treated fairly. We don't want that. So let's talk about the purchase side, right? So you're in it, in the main fair housing issue I used to receive was when I was working with a buyer, and the buyer would ask me, "What do you think of the neighborhood?" And I would have to say, there's a federal law. Anybody else having any issue with the audio? No one is typing in. Any? All right. Thank you, Shanitha. I didn't think so, but all right. We will keep going. So that's fair housing. All right. So again, the question is, what do you think of the neighborhood? I would always defer to the law. Hey, I really can't comment on the neighborhood because, I don't know whether it's a good or bad neighborhood. What does that mean? But that will be a question I guarantee you will receive, right? That comes up all the time. Florida, the neighborhoods change quickly. A lot of our clients are not from here, so they don't really know. But again, be careful on that. You can't be telling, oh, I wouldn't live here. This is a bad, no, you cannot be saying that. That is your opinion. But that issue, you will get that question, and that's how you handle it. You just tell them there's a federal law called fair housing, and you're not really able to comment on the neighborhood. All right, let's move on. So to legal compliance. Legal compliance typically has to do with three things. So it has to do with your post-licensing education, right? If you're a new agent, you have to complete your post-licensing education. If you don't, your license will become null and void. If it becomes null and void, you are not able to practice real estate anymore. You are not able to collect a commission. It's a problem. The other thing is your continuing education. You know, Dalton Wade, we have, 435 agents. And I looked on my roster, and 2 of them didn't complete their continuing education on time. Now their licenses are inactive. That happened October 1st. I haven't looked lately, so that was 8 days ago. Now, if they don't fix that, they will, again, be made involuntary inactive, not able to collect a commission, not able to show real estate. They're in a precarious situation. Do not let that happen to you, right? The state, FREC, is very, very picky. They'll give you a couple days grace period, but not much more than that. So again, get your post-licensing education out of the way. If you're past your post-licensing cycle, make sure you're doing your continuing education. And then the last one is if you move, right? You have to let FREC know that you've changed addresses. You can do that right online, and then all is good. You're compliant. You have 10 days from the time you move to notify FREC. All right, let's talk about your listings, right? So you're the listing agent, and how are you going to get folks through the property? You're going to coordinate that with your seller, right? Your seller, you're going to say, hey, how much time do you need? Once we've let you, all right. We're glad Inga is able to hear. All right, so showing protocol. So on your listing side, you're going to coordinate with your seller in terms of how much time do they need, 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, 24 hours. If there's a tenant in there, they may need 24 hours notice, right? So you need, to make sure you've got that coordinated so that when the calls come to show your listing, you know what to tell that other side. Now, when you're the buyer's agent, every single showing, without exception, needs to be confirmed. I'm going to say that again. Every single showing, without exception, needs to be confirmed, right? So again, you want to, when you're making your schedule, right, you want to get out there early. If you're going to schedule stuff for tomorrow after this training, and that listing you're going to go to has a tenant, there's a high probability you're not going to get confirmation because it's less than 24 hours. That might have been the listing your client purchased, right? So you want to, get those appointments confirmed early. Every single appointment, without exception, needs to be confirmed, right? It's lazy agents. I've had agents, I don't have listings now, but when I did, I had this condominium and I got a call, I remember, and the guy's like, oh, I want to show your listing. I'm like, great. When do you want to go? He goes, now. I go, what do you mean now? He goes, oh, I'm down below. Meaning it was a ninth floor condo. He saw from the photos it was vacant. I had an extra level of security on the lockbox, and he was just going to open up and go in. So uncool. Do not do that. It's if some properties are on combination lockboxes, do not be giving your clients the combination. I had to let an agent go for doing that. The buyer told me. The buyer, later on in the transaction got mad at him. They had some issues. She started complaining to me. I thought I had soothed her over. And then at the end of it all, she goes, "Hey, I want to tell you one other thing." And I'm like, "What's that?" "Oh, he gave me the lockbox code on a vacant unit." I'm like, "You're kidding me." So he no longer works here. Don't do anything like that. Again, we are in people's houses. We need to, be very, very diligent. We always want to make sure the door is locked. The lights are off if that's how you found it. I mean, you need to leave these houses, in the shape you found them in. Be careful that way. Open houses, let's talk about that. Setting up that open house, get it set up early. Open houses, we talked Monday night, are great opportunities to meet buyers. Those are the best leads out there, our open house leads. Open house leads far, far exceed internet leads in terms of their convertibility because they're usually ready now. They're out shopping now. A lot of buyers, they're online, then they go offline. And the first thing they do is they start going to open houses. We talked about 75% of first-time home buyers don't have an agent, right? You don't go shopping for an agent. They tend to meet an agent, and it often happens at an open house. So, again, why listings are so important is because you can do open houses through them, and you can meet some buyers basically for free. You're not paying a Zillow or a Realtor.com or a referral fee to somebody to kind of gin you up some listings. Get there early, get it set up. It's an opportunity. You don't want to be, if the open house starts at 2, you don't want to be rolling in, right at 2 o'clock. People will be waiting for you. You look disorganized. Get there early, get set up, be ready for that first visitor. It's an opportunity. We call it bonding. You're bonding with those guests, right? And your first duty is to sell the house, right? But your second duty is to yourself, and if you can, meet them, awesome. I mean, I cannot tell you how many buyers I got off my listings, many, but it was all, again, pre-planned. I'm there doing that open house with the hope that I'm going to meet some buyers, right? And I worked at it. All right, RESPA. Let's talk about RESPA. Who knows RESPA? Anybody know RESPA? It's an acronym. What does it stand for, and what does it have to do with? Anybody know? All right, RESPA is the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. It's a federal law, and it has to do primarily with kickbacks. Who might kick us back some money? Anyone know? Who might kick us back some money that's involved in the real estate settlement process? Ernesto is typing. Yeah, illegally. Kickbacks are illegal, Ernesto. So basically, who might kick us back some money? No. Warranty companies, no. Warranty companies, there's not enough money. They're only getting $500. There's not enough money for them to actually kick us back anything, really. So they're not usually the culprits. The culprits tend to be mortgage companies, title companies. They have margin, they have profit in what they do. So there's money to be able to give to the real estate agent to drive business to them. That's illegal. That's illegal. Any type of kickback is illegal. What's a kickback? A kickback is you send them a client, and they close with that client. Let's say it's a mortgage company. Sorry, guys. Say it's a mortgage company, and they kick you back $500. After the closing, that would be illegal. Now, referrals, we talked. Well, I mean, they can contribute. They can contribute. Um, and that is something that has to be. It's typically where both parties are contributing something, meaning the real estate agent and the lender. So, and again, it is related to a service, like they're providing brochures at the open house, or you can do what's called co-marketing with Zillow, right? A lender can pay for that, and that way, but they're popping up on the ad. So it's those are permissible. You have to be careful with them. What's not permissible is that kickback. Right? A kickback is different than what I just mentioned. A kickback is when you close, they give you $500 in cash. That's a kickback. That's illegal, right? So it is a gray area. It is an important area to understand. Referrals are advisable. But when it's a referral with a kickback, that's illegal. When it's a referral with no kickback, that's perfectly fine, right? You're not benefiting as the agent, right? That's, if there's a benefit, that's where the problem comes in. And there are some gray areas here. Referrals are fine because referrals are helping you and your client work with a lender that does a good job. Right? We've all heard the horror stories and experienced them when, the lender can't close on time and it causes your deal to fall apart. Do I want to work with a lender, like that? No, I don't. So I'm not recommending them to my client because I know it's going to cause me problems and issues and them problems and issues. So referrals are fine, right? I mean, and again, you may refer three lenders and all There is no referral fee. There is no referral fee from a lender or a title company. That's illegal. That's a kickback, right? You're referring them without any economic benefit to you. So referring somebody is fine as long as you don't receive any compensation, right? Because why you're referring them is so that they get better service. You're not referring them so that you're getting, some type of benefit. Now, again, it's a gray area there. The thing with Zillow, sometimes you might refer somebody, so maybe indirectly, there's some benefit. So it's tricky. It's tricky. But again, that direct referral fee is illegal. A referral without any fee is fine. Everybody good with that? In fact, you want to refer your clients because it helps them, right? It helps them have a better experience purchasing that home. Like, I often say if you're working with a lender, that you haven't worked with before, you've lost control of the transaction. It may go fine, but it may not. I get calls all the time from my agents that they're having difficulty with lenders, not being able, I got one today. They're supposed to have the financing commitment on Friday. I'm going to say who it is. It's Quicken Loans. And she doesn't know whether they're going to get it. She's nervous. She doesn't, I told her what she has to do. Her deal may fall apart. Lenders don't care. Like a lot of them, here's the thing, the closing date isn't a suggestion. It's a date. Quicken is bad. There's a lot of bad ones out. They don't care, and what happens, and we're experiencing this now, rates have come down. So they get refi business or they get a lot of, business is good. They don't hire more people. They just make people wait. And that's unacceptable. That's not good, right? We depend on, I mean, we depend on our commissions to, for our livelihood. It's terrible when a lender, causes that not to happen. So since we're talking about lending right now, I usually weave in this question. If you're working with a buyer, would you take them out and show them houses if they're not pre-approved? This is something that is going to come up. You're going to experience this. This is going to happen. Maybe you met a buyer online or an open house. They want to go look at some properties, and you ask them, "Are you pre-approved?" And they tell you no. Inga says she would never do that. Anybody else? Ernesto says he would do it. Anyone else with any thoughts on this? You have a potential buyer and they want to look at some homes, but you ask them, "Are you pre-approved?" And they tell you they're not. Do you take them out and show them properties? All right, Ernesto's typing. We'll see what he types in. Anybody else with any thoughts on that? Any comments? Thank you, Ernesto. If you don't, you lose the chance. So Inga, listen to me. Derek says no. Okay, so we have 2 no's and 1 yes. All right, so let me help you guys. Here's the thing. I keep track of pretty much everything, and what I found was that if I took them out, there were a couple benefits. One benefit was more than likely I could get them to my lender, right? So that then I know I'm not going to have an issue with them not, follow. That's a good point, Derek. But usually most people have some idea, some thought, kind of have an idea. So I take them all out. I take them all out, and I try to get them pre-approved. What I learned, Derek and Inga, was out of 5 people, 4 of them I could get pre-approved. So Derek and Inga took nobody out, got no deals. I took 5 of them out. 1 wasted my time for maybe 3 hours. Maybe I took them out twice. But the other 4, I got transactions. You got no transactions. I got 4 transactions. Take them out. Get to know them. A lot of times, maybe their credit. Maybe, you'll send them through credit repair. If you don't take them out, they'll find somebody else that will. I mentioned, I don't know if everybody was on the call, I was talking about, there you go. Thank you, Ernesto. I mentioned, that one buyer, young couple, I ended up getting 3 other transactions out of them. I took them out. They weren't pre-approved. No, take them out, Inga. Take them out. Take them out. You're putting up a roadblock. I mean, obviously you're going to do what you want. I'm just telling you from experience, right? If I would have said to those folks, "Hey, let me get you," maybe they don't do it. You never know. I mean, I wouldn't take somebody out multiple times, but that first time, maybe even that second time, and then I'd have that conversation with them. "Hey, you need to get pre-approved. Let me send you. Here's my lender. Here's a couple lenders I work with." Works. And again, I mean, I wouldn't do it if I had gotten burned multiple times, meaning, most of them can't get pre-approved. It is a personal decision. I'm just telling you my own experience. Well, then that's a different situation. Then, if you've gone out and you've wasted your time and, they've done that to you and they can't get pre-approved, then I understand where you're coming from. There's no right or wrong answer here. You got to kind of make your own decisions. And decide what you think is best. So that's the pre-approval. That comes up. That's something we all face. The other one is buyer's broker's agreement. So buyer's broker agreement. That's kind of what I feel, Ernesto. But again, it is a personal thing. Inga's had a different experience than maybe I have. So she's gonna, it's based on, what's happened, what you find. So, again, there is no right or wrong answer around this. It is a personal preference, and we all will kind of make whatever decision, we need to make. All right, so moving on to the buyer's broker agreement. So buyer's broker, so, when you have a listing, there's a signed listing contract. Obviously, many times when you work with a buyer, there is no agreement. You're just working with them. They potentially can go around you. They potentially can stop using you. They potentially can go to an open house and put the offer in with the listing agent. So sometimes some agents use a buyer's broker agreement. Some agents are adamant that every one of their clients is going to sign one of those. Anybody have any thoughts on those? Does everybody understand what a buyer's broker agreement is? What are your thoughts, Inga? Is that something you use? Do you not use? What do you think there? A lot of times people won't sign. I mean, so then you're off to sort of a kind of funky relationship, right? You've asked them to do something and they've told you no. I'm not a fan of them. I know some agents, like, it really depends, on the person. It also sometimes depends on how you explain it to them. I always kind of equated it to like dating. Where you go on a first date and then you're asking the person to marry you. That's a little bit aggressive, right? Again, I think it's important that, we all, it's a trust. It is. It's also how good a job you do. I think explaining to the buyer right in the beginning how you work. A lot of buyers, you'd be shocked. A lot of buyers don't really understand. Like, I've had many buyers say to me, "Oh, does the seller pay you?" Or they think they pay me. No, the seller pays. So explaining to them, how you get compensated, how you earn your income, what you're going to do for them, right? And telling them that you're going to invest time in them, and then what you're expecting for that is loyalty. Have that conversation right in the beginning. All right, so those are not office policies and procedures, but those are things I like to bring up because I think they're important, and I think everybody needs to sort of understand, kind of how they work. And then, you have your own personal preference, both on, who you're going to take out, what they need to have, for you to, take them out and show them property. Are you going to make them sign something that sort of obligates them to you? All right, let's move on. So that's RESPA. Again, RESPA has to do with kickbacks, no kickbacks. Co-marketing sometimes certainly is acceptable. If you ever have any questions, you want to ask your broker. All right, let's talk a little bit about antitrust. Exactly. Sometimes you just follow your instinct. That's exactly, you can tell. You mentioned investors, right? I never liked investors. I always wondered, like, if you're an investor, like, why don't you have an agent? Exactly, Inga. Well, a lot of times they don't have an agent because they just go through agents, right? And other investors, work with an agent because that agent does a good job for them. All right, let's talk a little bit about antitrust. Antitrust has to do with the commissions we charge, right? So, you're on that listing appointment. We talked about that on Monday. I mentioned really what people care. You're going to tell them all the great things you're going to do, but really what sellers care about, what are you going to charge me and what you think my house is worth, right? And then you're going to have that discussion about your fees. And you might say, well, we charge, 2.5% or 5%. That's split evenly between myself as the listing agent and the buyer's agent. And then they said, well, how did you come up with that? What's that based on? How, that's a question you're going to get. How do you answer that question? You're talking about, your fees, your commission, and they're asking you how you determine them. What do you tell that, what do you tell that buyer? Excuse me, what do you tell that seller? Inga's typing, so we'll kind of, see what she comes up with. So they've asked you how you've come up with your commission. How do you respond? Not as a buyer's agent, Ernesto. As a buyer's, this is the listing side. So again, all the commission is paid to the listing broker, and then the listing broker actually pays the buyer's broker, right? So, or the co-broke. So let me answer the question. So it's based on the work we do. So selling a home, there's work. So the amount of work is what we get compensated for. But a lot of times, agents might say things like, well, it's the standard rate, it's the going rate, it's the prevailing rate, it's the market rate. Those words are problematic. Those words can get us in trouble. Those words are telling the seller that everybody charges the same amount, right? And therefore, pick me, because there is no competition. That's incorrect. That's a violation of antitrust. Antitrust has to do, it's monopolistic. There's been lawsuits against antitrust lawsuits against the realtor community, because there's this thinking that there's collusion, meaning, everybody charges the same amount. It's anti-competitive for the consumer. So that's antitrust, something to be aware of. It's a hot issue right now. Lead paint disclosure. So, where I was trained up in Boston, 95% of the houses are before 1978. So pretty much every listing has a lead paint addendum attached. Here, not quite as much, but, lead paint in that it's a federal form. Needs to be filled out correctly, needs to be filled out by the listing agent and the seller first, then completed by the buyer and the buyer's agent. There are pamphlets that have to be given to both sides. Lead paint is a very, very nasty medical problem. If a child eats lead paint, they're going to have, some very, very bad medical complications. That's why that form is out there, because before 1978, homes had lead paint. And if a child digests lead paint, it's terrible. So again, our job, we cannot make asbestos. I don't see asbestos so much here in Florida. In Massachusetts, asbestos was in the house. Here, I don't see it. I see it as the outside shingles are made of asbestos. Sometimes they're, and you can tell which ones they are. Asbestos typically is fine if it's not moved, right? It's when it's moved, that's when you have the issue, because then it gets in the air and it can be digested. Up north, many basement pipes were wrapped in asbestos. Was a problem. Here, not as much. So I don't see it as much, but you do. Was it in the house, Inga, or was it outside? That is fairly common here in Florida. That really, again, most home inspectors will tell you it's not an issue. Sometimes it can be a problem if it's broken, but there is no sort of, and it's the shingles, and you can tell. I mean, they have this sort of like dull look to them, and typically they were, homes built, 40s, 50s, 60s is kind of when you see it. But there's no specific form for that. But it is something, you would alert to your client, and certainly the home inspector is going to do that. But lead paint is there's more, I guess, if we're ever audited, there's it carries very, very extensive fines. If the form isn't filled out correctly, it's a $3,000 fine, meaning the buyer signed first. If there is no form and it needed to be there, it's a $10,000 fine. So it can be very, very expensive. All right, let's move on to the seller's property disclosure. So the seller's property disclosure, it's an optional form. We like sellers at Dalton Wade to complete them. It helps them identify any material non-visible defect in their home. So any material non-visible defect needs to be disclosed. So that is both in the listing agreement and in the contract. What's an example of a material non-visible defect? A mitigated sinkhole. You may not know that happened, but I guarantee you a mitigated sinkhole makes that, even though it's been fixed, it still makes that property worthless. That would be something that needs to be disclosed. We had a listing once where, and this wasn't disclosed, there was a Florida room off a townhouse, and if you opened the living room door, it went out to the Florida room. If you turned on the light switch was in the living room. It turned on the light on the Florida room. The tenant had his possessions in the Florida room. Well, come to find out, the Florida room was on somebody else's property, and it wasn't part of the home. That should have been disclosed. It wasn't. That was a good one. And again, that seller definitely, he knew and he hid it. And how we knew he knew is because at first he didn't complete a seller's disclosure. The buyer's agent, my agent, he asked. So he answered every question, the seller, except two. And on two, when it had to do with encroachments and easements, he answered, don't know. He knew, because what we found out later was how it got found out was when the survey was done. The survey showed the Florida room on somebody else's property. We talked to the survey company. The survey company had done the survey for that buyer when he bought the house. Who you have to be careful of is investors and flippers, right? Investors and flippers. They don't care. I mean, have you ever seen a seller's disclosure and it's all lined out, and then they say, "Oh, I didn't live here, don't live here, didn't live here." Are you kidding me? You just flipped the house. You know everything about that home, but yet you're unwilling to fill out the seller's disclosure, or you filled it out in a way that you're not telling the buyer anything. Be careful, be skeptical. I had one once, and again, was helping, it was in an over 55 community, top of the world, right? Top of the world is this place that has like 5,000 condominiums. It's huge, right? And each section is a different, there's the Netherlands and Rome and Italy, and they're all this like nation theme. So there, my client likes one of the units because there's a washer dryer hookup in there, in the unit. She didn't want to use the community washroom to do her laundry. So we put the property under agreement, and I asked one of my other agents had sold some like I think he had sold 4 or 5 units in there. And I'm like, his name's Leroy. I'm like, Leroy, can you send me over, the condo docs? He says, yep, I can do that. He goes, there's a management interview. I'm like, yep, we know that. He goes, they asked one question. I'm like, what's that? Is there a washer dryer hookup in the unit? They're all illegal. They're all illegal. I call up the listing agent. I'm like, what is up with this? He goes, oh, I didn't take any photos. I didn't mention it in the listing. Are you kidding me? That's your answer? You're a scam artist. You're scamming people. There you go. Top of the world, Inga. Again, like he knew it. It wasn't a surprise to him. He knew it was illegal, but he didn't disclose it. He was going to sell that unit and then have, at the end of the day, an extremely upset client. Here's the question you ask yourself. If the buyer finds out, are they unhappy? Always, always, always err on the side of over disclosure, right? It's much, much safer, right? That's one of the areas where we can get in trouble or get sued as a listing agent when we don't disclose something, when our listing is incorrect. So be skeptical of what people tell you. You're there. Gee, is that something the buyer needs to know? Now, again, it's fine to have an illegal, washer dryer, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, obviously it could be a problem, but if you told everybody, then, you as the realtor, you're off the hook. Escrow account. So most brokerages do not, we hold escrow for rentals. We don't hold escrow for purchase and sale. So again, you take your class and it's get the check to the broker within a day, and then he has to have it deposited within 3 days. That really doesn't apply because all the money typically is deposited at the title company or an escrow agent outside the brokerage. Those firms are not under the jurisdiction of FREC. That's why that happens. Forms and contracts. Let's talk about that. Florida has a crazy number of forms and contracts and addendums and different versions. Can make your head spin, right? But here's the thing. They've all been approved by the Florida Bar and Realtor Association. The bar are the attorneys, right? So us as agents, we are not practicing law, right? We can get in trouble if we are perceived to be practicing law, and if we're convicted, that's a 3rd-degree felony. We'll lose our real estate license. So we have to be careful, right? So the forms and contracts, we're not modifying them, we're not changing them. We're filling in the blanks and we're checking the boxes. That's what we get to do. If we want to put some commentary in there, that's in section 20. That's the end of the contract. There's a thing called additional terms, and we can write those in. All right, the Dalton Wade buyer acknowledgement. Talked a little bit about this last night. We're going to talk about it again. It's to protect us as to protect the broker, the brokerage, and to protect you as the agent, and to help our clients, to let our clients know exactly what our responsibilities are and what their responsibilities are. And we have them sign that. What's something that might be confusing? For instance, if someone's lived in a home for, a number of years, has homesteaded that property, their taxes are going to be very, very low. Their taxes are not really market rate. Then when that house sells, there's going to be a major adjustment, a major change. You might see on MLS the property taxes are $1,500. The house sells, and then they're $5,000, and the buyer's like livid. They saw the MLS listing, said the taxes were $1,500. That would be something that's in that buyer's acknowledgement. We're telling them that the property taxes they see may not be the property taxes they pay. And if they have questions, they need to, check with the property appraiser's office. It's telling them, what they're responsible for, what they need to do, so that they can't come back after us later and have a problem with what we did. At the top of that buyer's acknowledgement is a paragraph on wire fraud. We also have a separate wire fraud disclosure that we make all our clients sign. We're tipping them off that wire fraud is a major issue, a major problem, something that they need to be very, very conscious of. We've probably prevented 5 or 6 cases where potentially the buyer or seller was to be, fake wire instructions came into their email. But because we had them sign both the buyer's acknowledgement and the wire fraud disclosure, it's like overkill, but it's so important. Think if, somebody's, they're a cash buyer and they're buying a $500,000 home and they put $10,000 in escrow and they're wiring in $490,000, and that $490,000 goes to the criminals. Yikes. Never send any type of, wiring instructions. That's all done by the title company. Never do that. Talk to your clients about wire fraud. It is worth that 5 or 10 minute conversation. Again, we talked last night about the final walkthrough of the property, right? That's something. Exactly. So you refer them there. They have, the estimating, exactly. And then, they have an idea as to kind of what their taxes will be. The final walkthrough, to me, it's Realtor 101. I can't even believe I have to include this, but I get agents that, don't get it. I had one agent, and this kind of summed it up the best for me. We're like, where's your final walkthrough paperwork? Because we want that, because we want the buyer to acknowledge they're accepting the property. They've inspected it before closing and are good to go. We want that in our file. So we're asking her where it is, and she says, well, that buyer was a friend of mine. Obviously, she didn't understand the concept. The concept is you're going there right before closing to make sure that house is being turned over to the buyer in the condition that it needs to be. And the condition is only normal wear and tear. If it's the as-is contract, the seller has to keep that house up right through and up to closing. What if the air conditioning system stopped working and you closed? Your buyer owns that house. If you didn't do that final walkthrough, they're going to be livid. And you messed up. You did not do a good job for them. It doesn't take a lot of time. Compliance. Let's talk a little bit about that. Get your paperwork in. Get your paperwork submitted so it can be reviewed. Why? To protect us all. If there's a problem with the paperwork, the sooner we know it, the better and quicker we can fix it. Or if something is missing, or something isn't correct, or a signature missed, or an initial missed, you never know. You want those things to be perfect, but we're all human. We all make mistakes. Get your paperwork in so it can be reviewed. If, some agents struggle with the paperwork, I call them paperwork challenged. Get a transaction coordinator. Have somebody do, you're going to have to pay for it. It's $390. A transaction, it's well worth it. They do, a heck of a lot. If you're, I have one agent, his paperwork is never in order. Never in order. Can never pay him. We pay him eventually, But, the time he spends coming here, dropping off the check, coming back to get the check, he wastes so much of his time that he could have hired a, transaction coordinator. It is certainly advisable. It is definitely advisable, Inga, to get it. It definitely is. You want it on both sides if you can get it. The thing is, it is not a required document. So it is something that is, for the buyer, is optional. We can't make them sign it. There's nowhere in the contract that talks about, the buyer needing to sign that. So again, you can ask, and it's always good to ask. And if you can get it, it's good to have. But if they say no, there's not a lot you can do. And even if you're the buyer's agent and your buyer doesn't want to sign it, it is difficult to force them to do that. All right, so it should be mandatory. I think I 100% agree with you, but it isn't, and it is not contractually part of the contract that there's a final walkthrough. Now there's a difference between the final walkthrough. I mean, you're always going to do the final walkthrough. I mean, any good agent is going to do that with their client, right? There always is that. Where what isn't required is the signing of the form. Well, you don't have to worry, Ernesto, but it's always better. What you're worried about is that after the closing, the buyer comes back and starts complaining. Like I can't, as the broker, you get all the, yeah, you got to be careful. I mean, I get emails of people wanting, they're looking for a home. I just, I just ignore them. So they're out there, but I mean, I had a call from one of, my agents, and then I just said, hey, have the client call me. She bought the house. She wasn't there. They did the final walkthrough. There was the inspection. And then she starts complaining about the plumbing. The thing is, stuff breaks. Right? I mean, when you buy a house, that's, you want to, I mean, you got to be prepared to fix things, right? Because it's now your responsibility. If you want to be a renter, then, the landlord will fix things, right? But there are people out there, and again, a lot of times nothing comes of it, but they're out there, they're just kind of trying to, let me ask, let me see what I can get. Let me, they always want something, right? And she calls, and I'm like, hey, look, there was a home inspection. You didn't have an issue there. The agent went and so sometimes you just got to tell these people, like, have a nice day. I'm sorry, but that's what home ownership is. Things break. I mean, I had an agent call me, the AC broke 4 days after the closing. Probably should have had a home warranty. They didn't. It's unfortunate, but, there's nothing they can do. They can't go back, to the seller. The house closed. So those are some of the things. It's always better. I mean, it's always better. I have another situation where, there's some issue with the ductwork. Yeah, they had a home warranty, and now the home warranty company is refusing to pay. So you never know. I mean, like any insurance company, they ultimately have to sort of give in. Yeah, if you can get the seller to pay for it, I mean, it always is good to ask to see if the seller will pick that up. All right, let's move on. So again, what we just talked about are things that hopefully are now clearer for you guys, a little more crystal in terms of, kind of how that all works. These things come up, right? A lot of the stuff, we get tested on and we study on to get our license never really ever comes into play. Personally, I think the whole real estate licensing curriculum should all be revamped. They don't talk about the contract. I mean, the stuff that they talk about is kind of useless in a way. But anyways, it's just my opinion. All right, so let's move on. So let's talk a little bit about Boomtown. So Boomtown, is something for Dalton Wade agents. It's a great tool. I just actually upgraded all my agents to full Boomtown. So they all have all the features now. I don't know if I've updated. I just did this at the beginning of the week. So Boomtown. So what you need. So if you're not a Dalton Wade agent and you're on this call, you need something similar to this, right? The Dalton Wade agents get this for free. They get their agent website, and then basically, and when we talked Monday night about the 4 horsemen for real estate success, let's go through one of them. They're the listings, doing your calls, internet leads, sphere of influence, social media. So internet leads is Boomtown's wheelhouse. That's what it helps you do. It helps you convert internet leads. See, the thing with internet leads is this. If you get 100 leads, right, that come in over the internet, either to your website, a third party, whoever it happens to be, let's say 3% of them convert, meaning 3%, 3 out of 100 will turn into a transaction. The problem is you don't know which 3 turn into a transaction, so you have to treat all 100 exactly the same. That's a pain in the butt sometimes, because the opposite of that is 97 of those 100 leads are junk, are not going to convert, but you still have to spend time calling them, texting them, emailing them. Boomtown allows you to automate a lot of that marketing. Yeah, Claren did that. She does it every week, Inga, so you can check that out next Tuesday or watch the YouTube videos. But she does do that every single, and she's awesome. And here's the thing, I'll give you an example. Claren, so for those who are not Dalton Wade agents here, Claren is my marketing person. She was actually one of my first agents. When I came to Florida, I bought some Zillow leads, and I was getting too many leads. So I said to her, hey, Claren, can I give you some leads? And she said, sure. And if she converted them, she gave me a referral fee. But she, and this is a true story, she had a lead from 18, that was 18 months old. It was a Zillow lead, and she kept touching them. She kept sending them stuff. She was working them. And then all of a sudden the property came on, and that was the property for them. 18 months later, she sold them that house, and then she became their listing agent. 2 $15,000 commissions, 30,000. 99% of agents out there never got them because they don't follow up, right? Internet leads require disciplined follow-up. You should be working your internet leads an hour a day. Again, I'm going to tell you, that's a great story. I'll tell you, a not so great story. So I had an agent call me, and I might have told this before, so we might have heard it, but I'll tell it again because it's important. She called me and she said, Boomtown, you have to, only one email address can be registered. And she called and said, I got a lead and it didn't go into Boomtown. And I know what that means. It means that email address is already registered. So I look, the agent, who's a good agent, had called them, put them in nurture, right? Nurture, right here, nurture. Nurture means you're going to follow up with them. She never followed up. So that lead was now looking for another agent. I transferred the other. We were lucky, that it stayed within Dalton Wade. Just luck. So I transferred the lead to the other agent. 45 days later, $9,500 commission. The other agent had them. All she had to do was do some follow-up, send them some text. You can text out of the system, right? She didn't do that. It's a great program. It's something, again, internet leads are part of the landscape. Internet leads have been part of the landscape for a while. Internet leads, the landscape is getting more and more aggressive in terms of, like, it used to be you had to call them in an hour. then it was a half hour, then it was 10 minutes, then it was 5 minutes, and now it's immediately. Because if you don't call them, they may find another agent. Boomtown helps you. Not all the leads are converting immediately. Some, you might get a lead from somebody from Boston, my hometown, right? They're not coming down here till January. It's 3 months, 4 months from now. But that lead is in. They're looking now. And if you stay in touch with them and help them, and it doesn't take a lot of effort. When they come here, you will be the one that takes them out looking for properties. But if you don't do anything, you don't follow up with them, you don't have a consistent plan on how you're going to follow up with them, they find somebody else that takes them out then. It's an awesome program. It really is. It's very expensive. So hopefully we can use it. But again, so there is no more such thing as advanced. All these, all these things, smart drip campaigns, it telling you who to prospect, blogging, it is all part of your basic subscription, and it really automates all your marketing. The thing about being a real estate agent is, and the thing about internet leads, commissions, like a transaction is a lot of money. It can be 5 to 10,000. Sometimes they're smaller, but a lot of times they're 5,000, 10,000. I mentioned Clarence, 2 $15,000 transactions. You convert 4 or 5, additional leads over the course of a year at, say, 6,000 a pop. You made an extra $30,000. And if you're at Dalton Wade, you paid me, 79 times 5 is $396. You get to keep it all. It's worthwhile. Work those leads. They will convert. But you gotta do it. Dot Loop. So Dot Loop, we also provide Dot Loop. So again, as agents, you have to do your transactions, right? Dot Loop is a paperless system. That's, again, it's all cloud-based. Boomtown, cloud-based. Dalton Wade, we're a cloud-based brokerage. So these tools, fit right in. So Dot Loop is where you're gonna, do all your contracts, right? And it has the electronic signature, and you're gonna, forward them to your client to sign. You're gonna share it with us as the broker so we can review and approve your work. It's a great system. Clients love it. It was the first. It's the best. They were the first ones to come out with sort of the cloud-based transaction management system. They're now owned by Zillow. A lot of trading, but again, it's one of those things, the business is technology today. So we want to give you the tools, and you want to make sure you use the tools. All right, this is the last slide. So this, again, we talked a little bit about social media on Monday nights. We're going to talk a little bit more about it tonight. So let's talk first, free accounts, right? So again, you're a new agent. One of the things, you want to do an audit of yourself, right? You want to type in Ernesto Aguilera, real estate agent. Put that into Google. Do that, Ernesto, right? Ingo Wator. Type it in, real estate agent. What comes up? What people do that? There you go. They're going to check you out. You want to have a good photo, a good bio, right? Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, Homes.com, the Dalton Wade site. It's all indexed, meaning Google is crawling it. And when someone types in your name, real estate agent, that's what's going to come up. It looks like you're a real estate agent, as opposed to somebody where they haven't set any of this up, and it's all blank. It's not what you want your online presence to be, right? Facebook, right? Again, having a face, like this first bullet, Zillow, Realtor.com, that to me is like, you have to do that. Again, you're going to get called by those companies, and they're going to try to sell you some stuff. Tell them no, or tell them yes, but they will set up those free accounts. It will help you. Have a nice headshot. Have a professional looking picture. Have a bio. Facebook, right? So you're going to have your personal page. You do not want to be, twining your personal page and your business page. You want to have a separate business page. You do that under your Facebook personal page, right? So they're linked together. Now you have to ask yourself, okay, I'm going to set up my Facebook page. Only do that if you commit to it. What do I mean by that? I mean that, and again, you don't have to post a lot, but once a week, twice a week, you're actually putting good content out there, right? What I see from agents are pictures of their listings and pictures of their closings. That's going to get no business for anybody. You want people to think you're the expert. I'm going to go back, again, I'm going to mention this, 75%, right? 75% of first-time home buyers work with the first agent they meet, right? No problem, Zinga. That's great. I mean, again, YouTube is awesome. Let's go back to those 4 horsemen for real estate success. Let's talk about them again. Listings, internet leads, social media, sphere of influence, right? We're not going to, delve too deep into them tonight, but each one of them, type it into YouTube. Type in, expired listings, real estate agent, internet leads, real estate agent, sphere of influence, real estate agent, social media, real estate agent. 50 videos on each subject is going to come up. I am just one person with only my experiences, right? I only know what worked for me. And I know it is not everything. So you can learn a lot, right? You can watch them, see what other agents do. And then, they're nice enough to share, right? And then you can copy them. Oh, well, thank you. We're actually, no, those are good for training. They're not bad. They're not bad. But again, and I go back to what I just said, I'm just one person. I only have my experiences to draw upon, right? There are other agents also with good stuff. You want to meld that together to come up with your strategy, your approach, how you're going to get your business going. Oh, Dot Loop and Boomtown. Exactly. Yeah, they're there. They're helpful. Those are Lisa and Claren have put them up. We try to, kind of make it so that, you can watch it as you go. Thank you. I'm glad you like them. But again, here's the thing with Facebook. If you're going to do it, you want to do it well. What you don't want is something half done or something where there hasn't been a post in several months. Because somebody might see your page and then there's nothing there or there's nothing recent. And then they say, gee, are they still in business? Are they still an agent? Doesn't look good. Sometimes it's better to have nothing, not even to have a presence, unless you're going to commit to it. Follow other agents, see what they post. I'm about posting content, information, helpful tips. Like, again, it's why do I do these webinars and allow agents that don't work here to be on the call? Well, I figure I'm training my own agents, helping them, I'll help others. But there's another benefit to me. The benefit is that I get a lot of agents, not a lot, but some that join because of this, right? You can use that same concept, right, through a first-time home buyer webinar. I've yet to see anybody do it. I can't believe it. I know it would be a home run. I know it, but it's that they can't seem to figure it out. Did my first webinars, they were terrible. I'll admit it. I had the internet going down. I didn't have a professional mic. People couldn't hear me. I kept going. I made them better. First time home buyer webinar, it's not out there. I don't see it. I know it. There used to be first time. This is kind of, pre-internet, or maybe, not even pre-internet, but there used to be first-time home buyer seminars, where the buyers would go, there might be some pizza, there'd be a real estate agent, a lender, title company, an inspector, right? And help educate that buyer. Everybody looking for business. Now you can just do it all online at a very low cost. You got to try things, but again, social media, again, it's a strategy like everything. You got to, step back, plan it out, think what you're going to do, and then commit, and then build. I look back and I say, I remember when I first started, a little over 4 years ago, like I want videos. I gotta have, but it's impossible, right? But what you do, it's like building a house. It's brick by brick, and then in a couple months you have more, in 6 months you have more, in a year you have even more, right? And then that's how you grow your business. It doesn't happen immediately, right? But you got to find things that are effective, that work. Some things aren't going to work. Have I wasted money on marketing ideas? Yeah, I have. Happens. But, then you stop. All right, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody being here, spending some time. Hopefully we learned a little bit more. I'm going to send out tomorrow morning the listing presentation, that appraiser's worksheet, and yeah, exactly, Inga. There's a lot of good stuff to share. It's that consistency of putting the stuff out there, that again attracts people to you. Gee, that's some interest. They learn, right? They got something. When you post your listing, yeah, you might get some people that want to look at your listing or your closing, telling people, oh, I had a closing. But that's really not what people want. They want, they want knowledge. They want information. You want to communicate that you're the expert. Exactly, info. Exactly, that's what it is. It's a strategy. It's a way of working. An hour a day, doing your calls. An hour a day, working your internet leads. An hour. The market is great. The only issue right now with the market is there's a lack of inventory. There's a lack of homes to buy. It's pretty good. We had that dip probably about a year ago. Up to Christmas, it slowed down, but right, it's a seller's market, definitely. It's a seller's market. It's still good. It's, owning a home is still, rents are high. As a homeowner, you get that interest deduction. It's great. It's nothing better. It's the best way to build wealth. It really is. So we're all in a good position, and that's why we got to make hay while the hay is to be made, because it may not be like this forever. It is cyclical, right? And we've been on an upturn for really 8 or 9 years. I remember I started as an agent in 2008, and it was difficult. And I tell you when it was worse. In 2010, they came out with the first-time homebuyer tax credit. And when that expired, the market, there was nobody left to buy. It was very slow. And then starting in around 2012, things have just, boomed. Yeah, ouch, 2008, there you go. 2009, to me, the worst was 2011. Brutal. That was the bottom, but then it's turned up. So let's keep our fingers crossed that it keeps going well. All right, guys, thank you so much. Look for that email tomorrow. I appreciate everybody being here. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll talk soon. Thank you. Bye, Ernesto. Thank you.